In this episode, we are looking at the hardwires of unconducive parenting and abuse. A baby wall, necessitated by the effects of an unconducive parenting culture.
Unconducive parenting is the biggest culprit that is on the nurture phase on the primary hardwire level. Secondly, abuse, the ABU, the abuse hardwire. So if you have been treated in an unfriendly way, verbal abuse, we scream at our children, no, don't. Those things are eventually becoming verbal abusive, that the child takes to himself and feel, I'm not safe, I'm not okay. You break down that self-esteem of the child by abusing the child verbally, emotionally, digitally nowadays, sexually and physically.
It's a beautiful sunny day in the community of Makassar in the Western Cape. The adults are enjoying the warmth of the African sun, while the children laugh and play. In this example, we see the mother acting in her primitive brain. Her behavior is impulsive, and she does not consider the effects that it may have on her child and the other young children that are exposed to it. The affected children pick up on these negative parenting habits and will probably raise their own children in the same way, leading to a broken community.
In terms of unconducive parenting, it is of critical importance that parents must be very aware that children are extremely susceptible to the sensory signals that comes from around them. In other words, they are influenced by everything that are happening in their vicinity. And the perception of the child in terms of those sensory impulses that come must be that the child is safe and the child is okay. If anything is not okay, in other words, the child perceives something that is different, that is not the same as the child wants to be in terms of safeness, it's interpreted as danger. For instance, if a child is a small baby, the child basically, and we assume that, will have unconditional love. The child basically can do anything, like wetting the nappy and like probably vomiting somewhere where it's not, kind of acceptable. And that will still, from the parent, instill unconditional love, and the child will be safe. But as the child gets older, 1 year and 2 years, these behaviors are not so acceptable anymore. And all of a sudden, the environment of the child changes. And what was acceptable is not acceptable anymore. And if the behavior then is different in terms of the child's perception, it's really a big problem. And therefore, in terms of the needs of the child, it is so important that the parent must ensure that what the child senses from the outside is becoming very quickly something that the child becomes used to. And therefore, keep away all the other stuff that is not aligned with what the child finds for itself as to be safe. So the parent must be very sensitive towards the needs of the child. It may happen, for instance, that the child's nappy is wet and the child cries. The parent thinks the child might be hungry, prepares the food and feeds the child. But the child does not stop crying. The actual fact is the child's experience is not the loving and caring experience from the mother, but actually an abuse. This means that we need to be very careful as parents to ensure that we check everything to make sure that the needs of the child is satisfied and that the child eventually has the sense of, I am safe and I'm okay.
As a parent, we want to give our children the best opportunities to grow and become the best versions of themselves. However, we seem to forget that growth starts from infancy and that the way you raise your children affects their future successes long before they even step into the classroom. Joan will give us further insight into the effects of parenting of individuals' lives.
Looking at the two different diametrically opposed parenting styles, we've got the one where that is very strict, very controlling, and the other that is very, very, very lenient. We look at the one that where it's strict and controlling. Parents' anxiety is very, very high, and they're feeling that the only way that they can control this situation is to be able to bring in more and more and more rules and regulations, which is what exactly happens in the child, is that it sends their anxiety up. And with higher anxiety, you've got lower volition. And with lower volition, you're going to have a non-responsive child. Nothing is going to get done. And so more and more and more rules and regulations and control come in. And so the higher the anxiety, and becomes also an ever diminishing circles that happen there. And the child will not grow on the OI level. And when they feel strictly controlled and disciplined, they do look for that love and that attention and that acceptance elsewhere. And that is sometimes where we lose our children, where they find it with peers that we would prefer them not to have as friends, where they might provide it with an older person who actually may be about to do harm to our child. So what is the effect on the child of a lenient home? There's a lack of boundary management. And what does a lack of boundary management mean? Is that we as a family haven't decided, what does this eco stand for? What do we accept? What do we not accept? What are our deadly do-nots? And how do we manage those boundaries effectively? And how do we all take ownership in managing those boundaries? And when we don't have that boundary management, our children become insecure. They are not given the opportunity to learn how to manage their own boundaries. They're not learning how to become self-driven, self-believing children. And so what does that lead to? It leads to, I will latch on to anybody who actually indicates that they might be a stronger person than me. And so I can go into all kinds of different things that may not be suitable. Gangs. I could get into abusive situations. I don't know how to manage myself if I do not have effective boundary management in my first ecosystem at home. And that is a critical point, is that I need to be able to instill in my child that ability to be self-driven, so that I'm not affected by what happens around me and the circumstances around me. I am internally locused and not externally locused and affected by external factors, but that I, within myself, have my own personal boundaries within which I can work. And that is critical, to be able to instill self-belief in a child and have a strong sense of self, to know, who am I, who do I stand for, and how do I set my own personal boundaries. So the four predominant hardwires that are manifesting themselves in children, first of all is ELOC, and that will come from your two different parenting styles, but also from our school system, where we control and want to control what they do, so they cannot almost initiate themselves. They need to be in our control. The second one that is manifesting is victim. That will be a spin-off from your bad attitude, is, but I'm poor me, I couldn't help it, and all the excuses that come in. It wasn't my fault, you didn't explain to me properly, my mother didn't pack this in for me. So we learn from an early age that I can deflect the responsibility for something, and I can get away from responding appropriately and ably to a task that I'm being given. The third one that is manifesting itself in our children is whiz, which is a wolf in sheep's clothing, where they're wanting to conform. So in front of the teacher or in front of a parent, yes, okay, we'll do it. And the moment you've turned your back and turn back quickly to look at them, you'll find them going at you, and as quickly they'll look away and pretend. But we're not teaching them to actually deal with the truth. If they want to do that behind your back, they should be able to have the tools, the truth tools, to be able to talk to you and express that. And that is in life what we're wanting to almost cover up, is behave as is expected of you, but underneath something else is happening. And we need from an early age to teach our children to deal and work with the truth, the absolute truth. And the fourth one is bad attitude, and that is very prevalent in our young people, and from an early age, where there's rolling of the eyes, body language, rebelliousness, and often that rebelliousness becomes being the cool kid in the class, that the others follow and want to follow. And that rebelliousness is what leads to followers, what leads to gangsterism, and what leads to what we're seeing today a lot in our environment and our country, in rebelliousness, non-compliance to even law and order.
In the next section, we'll be looking at the hardwire of abuse.
Abuse is a primary hardwire. It can happen between any person who wants to bully and take advantage of a smaller type of human or a weaker human. It happens in all these neighborhoods, doesn't matter whether it's rich or poor people. Abuse is the devastation of a human soul. We have no idea what destruction it causes to abuse a human.
Where's our injured baby? How you doing? Guys, please stop what you're doing. Relax, guys. Hey, how you doing, injured girl? How's the trip to the hospital? How's the trip to the hospital, baby? You didn't tie anyone, right?
No.
Of course you shouldn't. Anyways, do you have our lunch money?
No, I don't have the money.
What do you mean you don't have the money? I want you to walk to the tuck shop to buy us our lunch. Do it.
Guys, stop.
Hey, say we going. Whoa! What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, no, shame, baby girl's hurt.
So have you been bullied?
Yes, ma'am, quite a lot.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Many times.
Twice or 3 times. Most of my cases are merely like body shaming and all that.
Body shaming.
Yes, ma'am. Quite a lot. Some girls locked me up in the bathroom. They started physically hitting me. This bathroom.
It's an everyday battle because words are exchanged and I personally don't know how to address them and talk to people about it personally, but it's an everyday battle.
Humans abuse each other verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, nowadays digitally. And they are doing it maybe unintentionally, but they destruct the human spirit and soul, and maybe their physical bodies as well. So what happens when a human gets abused? They actually develop victim hardwire. That's your first and foremost very deep hardwire that says, I am not good enough, and I'm then wanting to go back to my little space of self-preservation. And then eventually they grow up, and then they don't want to get out of that victim mode. They start doing all these things for the perpetrator. They then start becoming judgmental when they've got a chance. And then they feel sorry for themselves, and and then that whole thing plays off. Abuser creates the biggest devastation in the mind of a human being, very likely forever.
And that gave me a sense of I was not enough to be here. What was wrong with me? Made me question why was I born? Made me think of suicidal thoughts in a sense.
I felt like I wasn't enough for the world. I felt very insecure about myself. I felt like I was just a person, not really knowing my worth at that time, because people overcame my happiest moments into my most saddest moments, because I was sad every day, never happy, always sad, crying over the same thing over and over again.
And speaking about it sometimes does bring back the memories, and it hurts. No.
So I've just given up on reporting and all that, because I now see that in the world there's no help.
You believe there's no help in the world? Everyone is just for themselves?
That's how it is from my experiences.
Step back, guys. Just walk. Next time you don't have our lunch money, it's gonna be worse, and you're gonna go back to that hospital. Get it? Good girl. Let's go, guys. She's not worth our time anyways.
There's at least 6 hardwires that is caused due to abuse. That creates tertiary hardwires, and the tertiary hardwires leads a human down the pattern to darkness.
Surrounded by the beautiful mountains at Golden Gate, Monique shares the impact of abuse on her life.
In nature we feel free, and then we experience the concept of freedom. But freedom lies in the mind, and most of us don't have freedom. We actually have minds that's caught up in slavery. And how does that work? It starts with abuse. When a human gets abused, their mind is a mind of slavery. They go into bondage. How does it work? Let's speak to Monique and find out about abuse and how it creates slavery. So have you been abused?
Yes, a lot of people have abused me in my life. As a child, as an adult, in school, primary school, sexually, verbally.
How does this bring you into a mind that is now caught up, and it doesn't feel as if you're free? What does that abuse do to you now as an adult in your mind?
I feel insecure, unloved, not good enough. And I've had a long journey with drug addiction, alcoholism, self-mutilation.
And that is cutting yourself?
Yes, cutting or burning myself. That's my outlet. And
so it's a warped coping mechanism that now plays out in your brain. And do you go back into that pattern that you're just stuck in?
Absolutely.
How does it work? Is it every day?
It becomes every day, becomes a certain time of the day. Mm-hmm. And the first opportunity, obviously, that I get, then that at least gets me to be okay until then.
Okay. You have basically become the abuser. You've been abused, and then you took over the role of the abuser.
Yes.
So you're saying I'm not good enough, and I'm not valuable enough, and now I've got to keep on playing out that role as the abuser of myself.
Yes, because you're trying to numb the pain. You're trying to avoid what actually happened to you by taking it out on yourself because you deserve it. Or
so you believe you're bad, even you were innocent, but you believe you're not good enough, and you're not, and you actually deserve to be punished almost.
Yes, even if I try to stop. My body is telling me it wants it now, and if I can't do something in that time, then I plan it. And the first opportunity that I get, he will make a plan, and I will get the best excuses to cover it up.
And that means you'll have to lie and steal to get it, because it's not about lying and stealing, it's about that obsession
Yes.
to go and hurt yourself or to numb the pain.
Yes.
And then all these other things follow, which then becomes a never-ending snowball of having to cover up and lying and become deceitful, and you just cannot stop that pattern. And you are caught up in bondage and in slavery of your own pain.
Yes. A lot of times the thoughts even come that you don't want to live.
Is that you have had
And
thoughts
when is it gonna be enough?
So you keep on basically dying a slow death rather than living and spreading your wings and ever knowing what your potential is and never getting to that full
Not
potential.
knowing what is the purpose, not feeling worthy enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
At a playground in Cape Town, Vivian poses a challenging question.
How do we raise children? How do we become conducive parents? Conducive parents that stimulate our children, that give our children a lot of love, and that is there for our children to grow and to prosper. And that doesn't overprotect our children. So you can be a parent that is trying to be good, but you helicopter your way to just like help the child in everything, and then that child does nothing and becomes dependent. Or you can be a parent that neglects your children, that just lets them out and then they must raise themselves in the street. Unconducive parenting creates all the different hardwires. It creates the victim. If a parent is not conducive and they don't have enough boundaries, the child is very likely to be abused. And then abuse creates a massive, massive spin-off effect in this world.
As we were shaped by those who came before us, we have the opportunity and responsibility to beautifully mold those who come after us.